Forza Horizon 4. So I hope you will join me tomorrow night for another Forza Horizon 4 adventure. And I'm going to leave you with the handicap thought. So let me think. Of all the things about disabilities, our economy seems to be, at least school and work, seems to be based on attendance rather than work quality. Grades have long been known to be more of a measure of how well you're pleasing your teacher or your professor than really a measure of your intelligence or how hard you work even. We need changes in standardized tests because a lot of us suffer from test anxiety. I had that all the way through college and all the way through school. I would just get the jitters bad before an exam, and I would do, not as well as I knew I had the potential to do because I would just have this high anxiety while I'm taking the test, and it would take me longer to do my test than most of my peers. I was usually the last one to hand in my paper or the next to last. So I think we need an overhaul of our schools and our workplaces. Instead of basing things on attendance, why not base it on how good of a job you're doing? How well you're doing on the job is a factor, yeah, but attendance counts for a lot. I could have gotten, a lot more perks on the job if I had had better attendance, but I have B positive blood. We found out during COVID that if you're A or B instead of A, B, or O, you have a weaker immune system, so you get sick more often. And, when I had a cold, it felt like flu, and I was out for a week. Now, you might be able to keep going with a cold, but in this time of COVID, we're realizing that really our workplaces are not too safe when it comes to germs. We need to redesign our toilets so they don't spray E. coli every time we flush. Think about that. Ew. And we need to redesign our workplaces so that we've got the ventilation going through a UV light maybe so that we're killing germs. Because just mere flu kills, about 300,000 people a year, because they get complications. And when you consider that 1 out of 5 people in our country are disabled, a lot of people have asthma or they have lung problems that don't show. They look perfectly normal, but when they get sick, they tend to get pneumonia. And those are the people that are more likely to die of just the flu. And if you get a cold and you give it to somebody who's got a weak immune system, they might get the flu from it, and they might, depending on how bad it is. But, even with a cold, you can get bronchitis, you can get pneumonia, just from a cold, common cold. So it depends on how good your immune system is and whether your lungs are healthy as to how sick you get. Now, I've not personally had pneumonia. I've had aspiration pneumonia from swallowing the wrong way, but not pneumonia. There's viral, there's bacterial pneumonia, and there's a third kind of pneumonia. But I think that might be the aspiration pneumonia from just swallowing the wrong way or getting sick to your stomach. And as you get older, your risk for that goes up. I never used to have problems with that. And now I'm 62, and that's a factor, every time I get choked when I eat, and asthma makes you do that. So, give a thought to, if you're an employer and you have control over that, you don't have, there's OSHA rules, and then there's just your own workplace rules. But if you could give an advantage to people who do good quality work, that maybe their attendance is not great, but what you care about is when they're there, are they doing the work, and are they catching up with the work that, is left from their absences. So, of course, I know that you've got to cover shifts and things like that, but if you're making sure your employees have enough sleep and that they can be out when they're sick so they're not infecting other people, then that just, as long as you're getting the work quality you need out of that person, then, maybe you can consider not being so strict on the attendance. Just a thought for the handicapped people in your world, because if you count 5 employees, 1 out of 5 has some sort of handicap, whether it's noticeable or whether it's an invisible handicap. So, I looked normal, and I looked 10 years younger than most of my peers because I never smoked. So, that enters into it too. It was, maybe it was hard for people to believe that I was sick as often as I was because I don't act sick when I'm sick. Tonight I'm really, really tired, and I try not to show that because, it's just a downer for everybody around you. So, I tend to kind of just smile, and if you smile, you can be dying. People think, oh, she's fine. So, but it's worth thinking about, the next time that you've got a PTA meeting, if you've got kids, you should bring up, maybe we shouldn't be so tight on attendance, and maybe we shouldn't be having the police involved when there's some altercation on campus. Because children are not mature, and if you have more mental health services in your school, then maybe you can stem some of this bad behavior in the bud. Children act out when there's something wrong. And so that's my plug for mental health. We need to have more mental health in the schools, because school counselors are psychometrists. They are experimental psychologists. They give tests, and the tests are biased against people of other races and cultures. So they don't really measure accurately how well a person is learning. But if you leave kids alone, they learn like crazy. The Montessori method is a student-led method of teaching in kindergarten, and I think it would be well to have Montessori methods more prevalent in classrooms, because if the child is enjoying learning and they can learn about what they want to learn about, then they're more motivated to stay in school and work harder. And of course, you've got to have reading, writing, and arithmetic. But do we need algebra? Think about it. How well did you do with algebra in school? Algebra is something that can be learned very quickly. If somebody needs it for the job, they can just take an algebra course and get it. But 90% of people don't use algebra in the workplace unless you're a high-level manager and you need calculus, or you're a scientist or engineer. You don't need algebra. What you need is to be able to balance your checkbook. And we have a lot of people in this country who really haven't got a clue how to keep their checkbook balanced. You know, we need to be teaching practical skills. At the turn of the century, in schools, they had a theory that, well, if you have difficult subjects like Latin and Greek, and you have all this intellectual study, it'll make kids smarter. No, it doesn't. They found that it was a total failure. You know, teaching Latin, which is a dead language. I mean, Latin is useful in medicine, right? Because it doesn't change. So, in biology, they name insects, animals, and things Latin names, so they won't change, because any language that is a living language like English, Spanish, German, French, Russian, Chinese, you know, they're going to change over time. So, you know, I really think we need to teach more practical things in our schools. Kids don't want to learn multiplication tables nowadays because they know they can whip out a calculator or bring up an app on their phone and do the math. So, you know, definitely it's, there's some things to think about there, and it really discriminates against handicapped students. It's a lot harder for them to get through PE. They had to pull me out of PE in 9th grade because I kept falling on the floor all over the place. When we started having real PE in 8th grade where we were running 5 miles, I could not physically do it. So I worked in the office, and I enjoyed that, but at the same time, it was embarrassing to have to go through all that, and here I am on the playground wheezing because I can't keep up with the other kids, and they're like, what's wrong with you? You know, so I think that workplaces and schools should be friendlier to handicapped people and to all people. I think that students should have rights. They ought to have an hour for lunch. They ought to have 30-minute breaks or 15-minute breaks after every class. You know, they need time to socialize. Half the behavior problems in schools would disappear if you gave students a chance to be with their friends and talk and learn how to resolve differences. And if you taught them proper communication skills, you know, don't allow name calling and bullying and cyberbullying. Schools should crack down on this. But that's just my opinion. But this is Granny Handicap, hoping that you will give some thought to, you know, how the workplace and how the schools are structured. And, you know, if enough of us get our heads together and think of better ways to do things, things will change. Because we really need to make workplaces and schools friendlier for our handicapped population. And also for our gifted population. You know, I have nothing against people taking algebra for fun or because they want to compete in math. That's great. That's great. So they should still keep teaching it. But I don't think they should require it, because most of us, it serves no useful purpose. And that's one of the reasons it's so hard to take it, because if you're not going to use algebra in your everyday life, why spend all that effort? You know, spend it on something like a foreign language that's useful. You know, if you have a population of Hispanic people in the neighborhood, you know, taking Spanish would be a really good idea, and you get practice out in the community. So, that's just my thoughts on things. This is Granny Handicap wishing you a pleasant evening, and remember, look at your can-do list. Don't pay too much attention to the can't-do list, because concentrating on what you can do gives you a more positive outlook on life. Instead of looking at that can't-do list and going, ugh, I can't do this, I can't do that, and you start, your self-esteem just starts going. You want to keep your self-esteem right in the middle there. So don't let the disabilities get you down. This is Handicapped. This is this is Granny Handicap on the Granny Handicap live stream. I'm Janice Cole, wishing you a pleasant evening. Good night.